maybe we should just blame injuries this year, Dad. Kyle's a great coach. Jimmy's a great quarterback. The Niners are the best team. It's just that they're hurt. And when they're healthy, they'll show you. What do you think of that?
This is, to me, it's not the most important segment we're doing today, but to me it is. I take this one very personally, so I'm going to go slow, and please bear with me. During the game, I got a lot of people. I was saying I'm impatient when you use injuries as an excuse. And a lot of people agreed with me, but I'd say maybe 40 to 50% were really angry at me. Angry, saying that, how people say crummy things on Twitter to you and personal and all of that. So I want to try to make a distinction because I want to be fair. Of course, the Niners have a lot of injuries. There's injuries on the offensive line. They lost their starting quarterback. They lost their starting running back. They have a lot of injuries on defense. And I would call that an explanation. I'm going to use the word explanation for why they're not doing as well as they should. Although I don't think it's an explanation for why they lost to Atlanta or those other two teams. Mm-hmm. But maybe they're not at their elite level because it explains some of it. But it's not an excuse. And here's why. Say, well, we would have beat them, but we had a lot of injuries. What does that mean? You don't get credit for would have beat them. Mm-hmm. You don't get a win for would have beat them. You don't get an asterisk in the standings for would have beat them. So when you say we would have beat them, but, Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw are out, and those are serious things. So what? So what? So what you're doing is you're trying to make yourself feel better. Mm-hmm. It's really about we're not fans, Iggy, but it's about a fan's psychology. Shit, we're 3-3, but really be 6-0. So it makes me feel better to blame it on injuries. I can't see any other benefit for it. There was a coach that Iggy knows who used to be an assistant coach with Bill at the Niners. And when his players on his unit would complain, he would say, tell it to someone who gives a shit.
Yeah.
The league doesn't give a shit. The Rams don't care. The Rams have to have a quarterback with an arm that's hurt. They don't care. Atlanta didn't care about your excuses.
Right.
Atlanta at the end was playing with two backup cornerbacks in that game during that long drive. And they never had their elite running back. They didn't care about the Niners' excuses. They had their own excuses. Mm-hmm. Plus, they suck. They had their own excuses. So, again, if you want to blame the loss on excuses, it's ridiculous. It doesn't matter. You don't get credit for excuses. You can have an explanation. To have an excuse doesn't prove Jimmy's good. Doesn't prove
or Kyle's good. Right. So because this is Kyle's excuse. Kyle uses this all the time. Kyle's always like, basically his defenders say he's a great coach, but, football is a violent sport with a certain amount of luck that you can't control as a coach, and he's been unfortunate with injuries. Bullshit. If he were unfortunate with injuries, some years he'd be fortunate with injuries, but he's never fortunate with injuries. So it's not a question of fortune or luck. There's something he's doing wrong, and I think it's pretty clear. He wants to be the most physical team in the league. He always says that. He wants to be the fastest, most physical team in the league. But they have a soft training camp. They don't play in preseason. So they're not really prepared to play that way. And then they get to the regular season, and every game in September and October, 3 guys go down.
Because they're not ready.
No, if you want to be the most physical, Harbaugh had the most physical team in the league. They didn't prepare like Kyle prepared. They had grueling training camps with 3-hour practices and tackling. He always talked about building up the callus and all this. Kyle doesn't talk about that. He just wants to get his athletes healthy to week 1, and then game after game after game they go down because they're not prepared by the head coach to play the style that the head coach wants to play.
Okay, I like what you're saying. So not only, I think you're agreeing with me, I think that injuries are not an excuse, but you're saying the injuries are actually the fault of the head coach. They're
a byproduct of the way he wants to play and the way he prepares them.
Yeah, boy, we're really going after him today. Kyle, I hope you're watching because you may learn some things.
Yeah, you might. It's overdue. Kyle Shanahan has a very good ability, him and his supporters, of blaming other people. The quarterback, the defense, whatever. No, it's the head coach. It's the head coach. That's who you are, Kyle.
Now, Iggy, do you agree with me that you're impatient with the injury excuse?
Absolutely. Year 6, it's every year. And we talk. I feel stupid. I picked the Niners to win the Super Bowl this year, and that would assume that the injury issue would take care of itself. It's never going to take care of itself. The Niners have to fix it, and they're not.
Now, I want to bring up another topic that's relevant to this, and we have prepared for this. Iggy, I didn't want him to go after the training staff or the doctors in his broadcasts, and I have a reason for it. Iggy is a football expert. He's more than most analysts in the country, more than most media. Iggy's really plugged into certain coaches, and he knows his stuff. I didn't want Iggy to criticize the training staff for a couple of reasons. Those people work so hard. They have degrees in this stuff. They mean so well. And more important, Iggy and I and all the other media members, we know football, although Iggy knows more than I do, but we don't know medicine. We don't know training. So I felt Iggy didn't have a platform from which to criticize that because there's no expertise. Yesterday, I have lunch about every 3 weeks with my friend, Dr. Gary Furness. He's a dear friend, and he wants to make sure I'm okay. He lives in Santa Rosa. I live in Oakland. We meet once every 3 weeks at Mr. Pickles in San Rafael, which is about halfway. And we were having lunch yesterday. And now, another thing about Dr. Furness, he is one of the lead doctors in the California State Athletic Commission. He is at all the major fights and even amateur fights. He deals with this all the time. And he said, Lowell, I want to talk about the injuries. Now, this is coming from a doctor who's with the Athletic Commission. And he said, I have my questions about the training staff. And I said, because I've told Iggy not to talk about it. And he said, boy, I'd have to say in this case, I'm on Iggy's side if Iggy's criticizing them. And Iggy's really not criticizing them because I've told him not to. He said, if Iggy has doubts, I do too. And he said, it's going on too long. It's either that their program is flawed or the players aren't listening. He said, I'm not there. I don't know. But a lot of these injuries, with the proper stretching and training, some of them are preventable. And so he says, I have my doubts about the training staff. Now, I'm not putting down the training staff, and Gary's not there. But again, it shows Kyle may be choosing the wrong people. What do you want to say?
That's the whole point. That's the whole point. It's not, I don't know whether the training staff is good or not. It's just that Kyle hired him, and they're not getting the results that the Niners need. Yeah. So the issue is that they had a trainer, Mark Uyama. He was there for 9 years. And they didn't have this issue. At the end, Trent Baalke started drafting players who were injured. But they didn't have issues where the whole team all the veterans would get hurt mid-season. Kyle comes, and the first thing he does is fire that guy. Oh. Who knows why? He immediately gets a job with the Vikings, and the Vikings have won a lot of games. Now he's retired. He replaces him with a guy named Ray Wright, who they'd worked with before, fires him after 2 years. You liked him. Now you don't like him. Then they hired someone from the NHL. Why? And then they have the same issue. So I have no idea whether Ben Peterson is doing the right thing and the players aren't listening, but whatever. Kyle put this structure together. It's not working. And if they were to get a new trainer, Kyle would hire him. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, why would we trust Kyle to hire anyone else in this capacity? So that's a problem.
Yeah. I guess the theme of our show today is really we're questioning Kyle on every level today.
Right. He's the head coach, and this is a problem.
And it's a continuing problem.
This is year 6, and he's not getting better in these issues. These issues keep coming up. And if you're going to say, well, you know what, he had injuries, give him year 7, he won't have injuries next year. Why do you feel that way?
Yeah, I think he will have injuries next year.
I think he will have injuries next year. And the year after that.
His pattern is, it's interesting. His pattern is to get injuries and then lean on the injury excuse. I want to point out after the game, I watched the interviews after the game. Kittle, Warner, and another came up and said the injuries aren't an issue. Mm-mm. Jimmy skirted around it because Jimmy's like Kyle. He's always said, I love when people say, I don't want to make an excuse, but make an excuse. Kyle does that too, right? And then also you said he blamed the defense.
Yeah, he did. He's like, the one play that really sticks out was when the defense gave up a 15-yard scramble to Mariota on 3rd and 12. That was the second quarter. What are you talking about? Blame the defense. He scored 0 points in the second half. Come on.
Yeah. What really stands out is the 8-minute drive that went for zilch.
How about the 7 points you scored for the Falcons with your offense? Fumbling the ball. How about that? No. It was the defense giving up a 15-yard scramble. Get out of here. That's weak.